Look at the headlines today, and you'll see a booming economy. Stock markets are hitting all-time highs, and corporations reach multi-trillion-dollar valuations. Yet the actual purchasing power of the average consumer remains completely flat. How can an economic system overflowing with so much total capital feel so painfully slow and restrictive to almost everyone actually living inside of it? This diagram illustrates where our perspective gets warped. We've been trained to measure the economy like that static battery on the left, looking only at the total accumulated capacity. What we should be measuring is the right side, the rate of flow, or the active current. Economic wealth functions as a dynamic loop of kinetic energy, behaving identically to an electrical current. To figure out why things feel broken, we must stop looking at bank balances and start examining exactly how the overall system is wired. Let's map out what a perfectly functioning closed-loop economy actually looks like. This schematic traces the initial path of capital. A business pays a wage, sending a direct current of money straight into a household. That household then channels that energy right back to the business by buying goods and services. The business takes that returning revenue and uses it to hire more workers, naturally expanding the circuit's total capacity and sending out even more current. Economists track the speed of this exact cycle. They call it the velocity of money. A high velocity means the current is moving fast and doing a lot of active work. Now we plug in banks and stock markets. In electrical terms, these institutions act as capacitors attached to our baseline circuit. Their job is to temporarily siphon off and store a portion of the current to build a massive charge. That charge is then deployed for huge investments, like building factories or funding research, releasing all that energy back into the main loop. In a properly wired system, the financial sector exists solely to amplify the flow of capital. It is never meant to permanently consume it. But when we map our modern economy, we find a massive systemic failure happening right at the capacitor level. We can see heavy current flowing continuously into the financial markets. The problem is, the exit pathway meant to discharge that energy back into the real economy is severed. Instead of flowing through, the capital gets trapped at the top. We see asset prices inflate rapidly, swelling the capacitor while starving the rest of the board. Mechanisms like corporate stock buybacks create a parasitic feedback loop. The energy just circles endlessly inside the financial sector, completely bypassing labor, wages, and expansion. Because the vast majority of that current is no longer in transit across the main board, the overall velocity of money drops drastically. As velocity drops, the entire circuit loses amperage. Without that active flow, the ground-level economy begins to mechanically stagnate and freeze up. Central banks respond to this stalling engine the only way they can, by constantly pumping brand-new current into the system, desperately trying to prevent a total economic blackout. Treating the stock market as a reflection of the whole economy is a fatal engineering error. It mistakes a dangerously swollen, jammed capacitor for a healthy power grid. The debate around extreme wealth concentration usually gets bogged down in social grievances and partisan morality. But at its core, a massive wealth gap is a physical failure of the economic engine. A circuit operating with too much resistance will inevitably burn itself out. We need to stop evaluating national health strictly by looking at total GDP or stock market caps. We measure true economic strength by the continuous efficiency, speed, and unobstructed flow of the circuit. Capital works exactly like electricity. It powers innovation, it builds cities, and it sustains life, but only when it remains in constant motion. When capital pools up and stops moving, the entire system eventually goes dark. Keeping the circuit closed and the current flowing is the only mathematical way to keep society running.